Hello, students, and welcome to part 2 of our lecture video on Chapter 7, which is discussing issues of the Gilded Age. We're going to start off today talking about the Chinese Americans and how they faced discrimination during this time. There's a couple of things here. First is the court case Yick Wo versus Hopkins, and the case was the Supreme Court basically ruled that Chinese Americans could not be stripped of their rights. Now, some people have asked during class, why were the Chinese Americans so persecuted? One reason is that they were taking jobs from native-born Americans, and the native-born Americans didn't like that. As we've discussed in class, these immigrants were willing to work for lower wages, so therefore employers were more willing to hire them. Another reason is that they were so very different from those of European ancestry. They looked very much different. They had different culture, different religions, and so forth. So that's why they were more persecuted. We also have the Chinese Exclusion Act, which it prohibited Chinese from coming into this country and lasted a very long time during this time period. We also had a fight going on for women's rights during this time. Probably the most famous women's rights activist was Susan B. Anthony. In 1872, she illegally voted in the presidential election in Rochester, New York. She refused to pay the fine and was later put in jail. She fought with another woman named Elizabeth Cady Stanton to try to get a constitutional amendment for women's rights. By 1900, 1/3 of all college students were women, which is a great increase in number from the generations before, in which most colleges would not even allow women to attend. The presidents during this time, known as the Gilded Age, were generally known for their weakness. They did not have a very strong moral character, and they did not have a very strong will, and they weren't strong, impressive leaders. For example, in 1876, Rutherford B. Hayes won because of a secret backroom deal that he'd made. We know that that deal was to bring Reconstruction to an end. In 1889, Benjamin Harrison, lost the popular vote. However, he won in the Electoral College. The most noteworthy president of this entire period is Grover Cleveland. He is the only president in our history to win 2 non-consecutive terms, and he had a reputation for integrity. Integrity means doing the right thing even when no one is watching. So he stood apart from the rest of the Gilded Age presidents because he was more honest than the others. Some examples of the corruption going on this time, one is the spoils system. Now, the spoils system was started a long time ago by Andrew Jackson. He took the military quote of "to the victor goes the spoils," and he applied it to politics. He said the person that won the election should be able to hand out jobs to those that supported him, and this became known as the spoils system. This didn't pay any mind to qualification, if someone was qualified to do the job or not. What really mattered was if you helped the person that won get elected. If you did so, then the person that got elected could then give you a job. That was the theory of the spoils system, and this was very rampant. It went on during the late 1800s at almost every level of government. Now, during this time, campaigning for yourself, in other words, going from door to door trying to get people to vote for you, was considered unacceptable. You were supposed to kind of sit back and let others campaign for you. If you tried to campaign for yourself, it was looked on as that you were desperate, and it was not very classy. That is very different than today. Okay, we're going to talk about civil service. Civil service means a federal job in the executive branch. If you work in civil service, that means you work for the government, essentially. You work for the executive branch. Now, during this time, a lot of the spoils system appointments were being given in civil service. People were getting jobs in civil service for helping people get elected. One big example is the post office. They would get jobs. Jobs would be handed out there for people that helped those get elected. So, to try to fix this, the government passed the Pendleton Civil Service Act of 1883, and it established a civil service commission to try to clean up the civil service. The commission wrote an exam, and those seeking a job in civil service had to take this exam. You had to pass the exam. You'd then be put on a waiting list to get a job. It greatly reduced the power of the spoils system. In other words, it helped the corruption some, but it didn't completely wipe it out. Now, the civil service exam is still in effect today. If you want a job in civil service, you still have to take the civil service exam. Now, we're going to talk about a couple economic issues during the Gilded Age. One was the tariff question. Now, a tariff is a tax on imports, those goods that are imported into the country. The Republicans wanted a high tariff on those products so that American-made products would be cheaper and people would be encouraged to buy American-made products. The Democrats said that the tariff was a bad idea because it would increase the cost for consumers and make it harder for us to sell our products overseas because the countries would then put a high tariff on our products. So this is a great debate between Republicans and Democrats. Should we have a high tariff or a low tariff? This debate was fought between the two sides throughout the Gilded Age. Another economic question was monetary policy. Some people thought that only gold should be coined and made into money. Some people thought that gold and silver should be coined. The Coinage Act of 1873 said that only gold could be considered money, not silver. However, the poor farmers and workers argued that they wanted silver coined as well. Now, the difference is if you only use gold, the money supply is very small and there's not as much money to go around. So those that already had a lot of money, they liked that because their money was worth a lot and they had a lot of it. The poor farmers and the workers wanted silver to be coined as well, so there'd be more money in circulation and they could get their hands on more cash. Now, if there's more money in circulation, that means that each piece of money is worth less. However, the poor farmers and workers didn't have a lot of money to start with, so that didn't concern them. So the poor and the working man and the farmer wanted gold and silver to be coined as money, and the wealthy wanted only gold to be coined as money. This debate also raged throughout the Gilded Age. The tariff question was the first one, and then monetary policy. What do we coin as money? Gold, just gold, or gold and silver? Now, farmers during this time were having a tough go of it in this country. Number one, prices for crops were falling because mechanized agriculture, such as the tractor and the reaper, were allowing each farmer to produce more. So when there's more products, each product is worth a little bit less. So prices were dropping, yet the debt was rising because a lot of farmers had borrowed a lot of money to buy the new machines that they needed for their farms. Cotton prices, for example, dropped dramatically in the South, and farmers had to put mortgages on their farms in order to pay for this new machinery. When prices fell, they couldn't pay it back, and a lot of them lost their farms. Also, big businesses during this time, the biggest business being the railroad, they were really charging people a lot of money. They were making a lot of money, but at the cost of the working man. So there again, they were charging a lot, and the working man didn't have a lot of money, but they had to pay the price because railroads were the only way to transport their crops, to transport products from one place to another. Banks were setting very high interest rates, and politicians from farm states quit winning elections because the industrial states were becoming more wealthy and more powerful and were sending more members to Congress, and those members were more powerful than those from the farm states. Thank you for watching video number 2 for Chapter 7, and have a great day.